There's two ways to open a window. The easy way, push down the button, it goes down. Or the wrong way. I know it can be annoying when they're not working, so let's diagnose it and get them back to working properly. The window is not working in this vehicle, so we're going to check it out, figure out what's wrong with it. The most common problems with windows not working is a window switch, a window regulator, or even a window motor, which we can get these all at 1A Auto. What you want to do is make sure you have the key on and then check the windows. You can check all the windows with all the switches. If none of those work, those are the front ones. And it seems like the rear ones are working. So they could be on a separate circuit than the front ones, most likely not. Most vehicles, it will be all on the same circuit, but it's always a good idea to check the fuses. In this vehicle, there's a fuse panel right here, and we'd want to check that. Now, depending on what the fuse is labeled, it may be different per vehicle. This one happens to just be labeled power. So that's this 30 amp fuse right here. You can pull that out, take a look at it and see if it's blown. Sometimes it's not obvious that the fuse is blown, so you may have to test the fuse. But when checking the fuse, if it happens to be blown, fuses don't blow on their own. There's a reason why. There's too much amperage being drawn by the motor, whether the window is binding up or the motor itself is just drawing too much current. Normally a switch isn't going to cause a fuse to blow. Or if there is a wiring problem, that can also cause it as well. So the fuse is good and the window switch isn't working. Sometimes moisture gets into these switches, especially if you have the window open and snow falls in there or rain. What you can do is just try to work the switch back and forth a couple times just to see if there's something sticking. Maybe even bend the switch a little bit and see. Now, if it starts working after doing that, that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, you fixed the switch. There's obviously corrosion inside there, and then that's what's causing the switch to fail. In that case, you're going to want to replace the switch. So there, that switch is working. So that's good. But our passenger switch is not working. Passenger front window. So let's go check out the passenger window. With the key still on and making sure that door lock or that window lock is in the correct position, just check the switch and it's still not working. So in theory, there's probably something wrong with the window motor or the regulator. Another thing you can do is listen for any type of noise. See if you hear the motor moving, because if the motor is moving a little bit, then there's probably power and ground going to it, and it's just the regulator is bound up. Either way, we're going to have to take the door panel off. Most door panels come off very similar. There will be some trim pieces that need to come off. There may be some push pins that need to be removed, and then also some screws that need to be removed. You may need to remove the armrest. And around the perimeter of the door panel, there's push pins holding in the door panel. So you pull that off, disconnect the wiring from the back side, and also if there's some cables that go to the door handle, take those off. Some vehicles have window tracks that are attached to the regulator, like this one. They may be in this area, they may be in other areas. And just be careful of your fingers. These are almost like a scissor, and there's sharp edges and stuff. You don't want to hurt yourself. Sometimes these bolts loosen up and they'll just fall out. So while you're driving down the road or you decide to open the window will just fall like this. That's not good. You may only have to take the door panel off, get to these tracks, and put these bolts back in. But if you cause some damage, you could have bent the window regulator, or the window itself. You could have damaged the window, smashed some glass. Then you're going to have to replace it. Another quick and easy thing you can try to figure out what's going on is you could take one of the switches from the rear of the vehicle. Most of the time, the rear switches and the passenger side switch are the same. So compare them, make sure the connectors are the same. If there's part numbers on the side of them, which there are, see if those are the same. And they happen to be the same in this case. So we could plug that in, turn the key on, and check it. And if it works, then you know it's a bad switch. That's a nice, quick and easy way to diagnose it. For this vehicle, the window connector happens to be right here for the window motor. I could just use a pick, take this off. You want to take a look at the connector, see if there's any corrosion in there, see if the wires are tight and they look good in the connector. But if there's corrosion in there, that's going to cause the window not to work properly. Depending on the extent of the corrosion, you may just be able to clean it out, put a little dielectric grease in there and put it back together and it's fine. If it's extreme, you're going to have to replace the connector, but you're probably going to have to replace the window motor itself. A window motor circuit is actually extremely simple. There's only 2 wires going to the motor. When the window goes up, you have power coming down one wire and ground on the other, or positive and negative, and to go the other direction, the polarities are going to change. So if you think of it like a battery, you have a positive side and a negative side. To go up, you have it going one direction. To go down, it goes the other direction. So what we need to test now is to see if we have battery positive coming out of one of these wires when we're flipping the switch up or down. And we can do that with a test light. You always want to test your test light on a battery before you start. Put one side on the ground or the negative and the other side on positive. Make sure it lights up. So we're good. We know we have power there. So what we could do to test for a ground is put this side of the test light on the power, on the battery, and then try the same test, testing for ground. Or we can do also is just go in between the 2 terminals, just like this, very carefully. And the test light's only going to light up if you have power and ground. And we do. So in both directions, we have power and ground. So in our case, we would need a window motor. And we could get that from 1aauto.com. Here's what the motor and window regulator would look like for a vehicle like this. There is a spring in there and a gear. You're going to want to be careful on a regulator like this. You don't want to hurt your fingers while you're doing it. You should put it in a vise, and then you can take those bolts out, swap the motor out, put a new motor in. The other possibility, if the motor was not working properly, the regulator itself could be frozen. These could be all rusted and not letting the motor do its job. So a lot of cases, you can get the motor and the regulator together, and then you don't have to worry about that. Nowadays, a more common regulator actually has cables. So you still have the motor, but there's cables that cause the window to go up and down. These little brackets are attached to the window, and you have the slides in there. And the slides can bind up, the cables can break off. The motors can still go bad. If we had a different situation and there wasn't power or ground at that connector when you were testing to see if the motor was working, the most likely cause for that is going to be the switches, whether it's the master switch or the passenger side switch. Either one. What you can do is test for those, do the same thing with the test light, and where the switch actually goes, right here, you want to test for power and ground. You should have the key on, and at least one of those wires is going to be power and one of them is going to be ground. And as long as you have power and ground at the switch is going to be the fault. So we're testing for power on the back side here, and we have this darker wire has power. And then if we're going to test for ground, we want to hook this to a power source. if you're back probing, be very careful. You don't want to push the test light in there too much. And there's our ground wire. So we know we have power and ground there. In that situation, the switch would be bad. So those are the most common problems with a window not working, whether you have a window regulator, a window motor, or even a window switch. And you can get those parts at 1aauto.com. Other alternatives, you could have a wiring problem or a computer problem. Some vehicles actually need to be programmed if you replace the switch. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. The window's stuck in this car. Do it again. But in the event where it doesn't, oh, it still works. That didn't work. That's going to be a blooper. A window motor circuit is actually very simple. There's only 2 wires that go to it. And when you flip the switch up, do it one more time.